I've got a good amount of gear that goes into beaver trapping, and in this video, I'm gonna just show you guys all my gear I got and the setup, the way I carry it around. So right here scattered out, I got a little bit of my stuff. I got other stuff over there on a shelf. We'll go take a look at that here in a second. But this right here is my real basic. So before we get into anything, let's first just take a look at the traps, because there's 3 different traps, and depending on where I'm trapping or what traps I'm setting, depends on kind of what my loadout looks like, I guess. The first kind of trap is a conibear 330, and I have quite a bit of these. We'll walk over there. I've got a bunch more traps over there in the shelf. We'll take a look at those right here in a minute. But this is my standard 330 conibear. Pretty good, all fine and dandy, nothing crazy. This is also called a body grip, and it's a pretty violent trap, low-key, but it definitely gets the job done. These are really good for blind sets, like at a den if I know where they're swimming up and under, or if there's like a little creek thing and there's a very obvious funnel that they swim through. And I can even make some caster mounts with this too, so if I'm just going in for 1 or 2 beavers, I'll usually use this trap as my go-to. But right there, I've just set the trap. It's got these safeties on the side. Once I unleash that safety and unleash this safety, it is ready to go and it will eat. Usually the way it works, you can see those 2 whiskers in the middle. When something moves those, this thing goes off. Let me show you. And then after I show you how it works, I'll go show you how many I got. And then after this goes off, I'll show you some of the things and tools I have for this trap. Bam. You gotta be real careful with these traps, guys. They're really dangerous, honestly. And the thing about it is that it's pretty complicated to set these things and to unset them. So if it happens to go off on your arm, you've got to figure out how to unleash this trap with only one arm, which is very difficult. But I do have that gear I need right in here. If I'm just running conibears, this is usually the only bucket I take. The first thing in my bucket is going to be the trap setters. Like I mentioned, those are so strong, you can't really set them with your hands. You have to have some kind of tool. This is one of the tools I got. I got another one. This one happens to have a latch so that whenever I do clamp it down, it'll actually clamp it and hold it there. That's a pretty nice feature. But you don't need that. It does make it a lot easier though. I'll show you how it works right here. Okay. Pretty simple overall though. Go ahead, clip it there, and I use leverage to snap it in. Come on. Snap it in, come around, and put the safety on. I can let go. Then I'll come around, do this other side the same way. Clamp it in, come around, put that safety on. If the safety will go, it's not wanting to go. Come on now. There we go, and then let go. The little clamper thing on this one's pretty nice. It's a pretty nice thing to have. But there we go, we got that trap reset and everything. That is my 330 brand. I guess I usually go with Duke, but I've bought a few brands. I don't see a difference really at all. Also in my beaver bucket, I have a shovel. It's a pretty basic shovel. This one's a really cheap shovel, but folds up good. It's short, it fits in the bucket, that's what I like about it. You're gonna be using this all kinds of different ways beaver trapping, so it's always good to have a shovel. You can kind of move your environment, and if you're making a caster mound, which is where you make a mound of mud, really good to do. And to kind of shovel around, make the area fit your traps, that's good too. I also have these right here, and these are actually underwater gloves. Since a lot of times when you're beaver trapping, it's pretty cold outside. That's when beaver trapping season is. The water can be super cold. So I've just got these big old gloves that go up to my elbow. Sometimes you got to go deeper than that, but a lot of times you don't. So I do have these. I think I don't know if they're leather or what they are, but they're waterproof and they'll keep your hands dry. And if you need to go in there and get mud, it'll keep them kind of clean too, but that don't really matter that much when you're beaver trapping. But it mainly to help if it's super duper cold. Now also, like I mentioned, beavers, you're probably going to be around water. You can get in the water, but at the same time, if it is winter, you do not want to get wet. I do have a set of waders. My waders aren't even that great of waders. These are like $40 on Amazon. They're really nothing that special. And that's okay. If they get a hole in them, I'll just buy a new pair. I don't beaver trap every single day, so if they do have a hole in them, it's probably going to be a small hole. And it's actually really easy to pop waders because there's a bunch of sticks and they're sharp sticks where the beavers will shoot them up. Usually that's where you're beaver trapping. It's not too hard to actually move your knee over and poke a hole straight through them. So I don't know. I didn't buy the expensive ones. But I do take them because you never know. Sometimes you don't even have to get in the water at all. Sometimes you got to get up to water up to here. So it's nice to have the waders if you do so. So I got my water gloves, water waders, shovel, conibear trapping tool. Now, even though a conibear is usually a kill trap and it kills them instantly most of the time, I still like to keep some stakes around. And I don't even use them that's super complicated, but so if this goes off on a beaver at all, it's definitely wounded. I've even caught them before where it just gets them on the tail. Even catching them on the tail or the back or anywhere is going to hold them down a good bit, but you still need some kind of good stake to kind of drive in there and at least put around this ring. So I'll take a stake like that and I'll beat it down there. And that brings me into the other thing I use. Usually this is my trapping mobile, but it is some kind of axe. And I like this one right here. No particular reason, but I do like having the axe because you're going to be using it to hammer stuff in. But if you need to, you can also use the blade to actually cut stuff up. So if you ever need to chop a log, because sometimes you need logs for your sets, I can use that. Another thing, I do carry a machete, but that's because I have the whole bed. I can carry stuff. If I was just packing everything on my back or a bucket, I probably wouldn't pack the machete. But some kind of axe / hammer, I would definitely be packing. And these are the stakes I use. They're just real simple. But you can use rebar too. Those are just some random stakes I had. Digging on down in the bucket, here's what we got. I have a safety tool for the conibear. These are really good. This is an extra safety that you can put on the conibears after you get it set. Especially if you're moving around the position a lot. It doesn't take much to accidentally pop one of these off. One of the built-in safeties and accidentally get flipped over. That's a good time to have this on. I say that, and you can see how many times I've used it. I don't think I've ever actually used it. But anyways. It's also why it's in the bottom of the bucket. Also, can't go wrong with some pliers. Well, we'll talk about the pliers later. And then down in here, this is the gold. I use this pretty much every single time I'm beaver trapping. And it is beaver caster or caster imitator. But one way or another, this is beaver caster scent. I'm just going to call it beaver caster. This is like the smelly stuff that gets beavers interested and getting them going and in a fighting mood. In the same kind of mood you want when you're trying to lure them into your trap. So this is always in my bucket, hopefully, unless I lose it like I did 30 minutes ago and had to go track it down. But here's the thing. I'm going trapping beavers in like an hour and I lost this. And that was literally going to postpone my beaver trapping because I need this to trap beavers. I mean, I can trap beavers without this, but when I have this, it is my main thing in my kit. This right here in this jar is responsible for 90% of the beavers I catch. So it's really important stuff. This is a 4-ounce jar. You can buy a 1-ounce jar, but 4-ounce jar has been putting me on 2 years strong right now. You don't need much of it to make a trap set and you're good to go. So that being said right there, you got the 330 conibear. You have the setters to set it. You got the shovel to manipulate your area a little bit. Trap stake to stake it down. You got the axe. And then if it's a blind set, you're pretty well good to go. But if you need a caster, boom, you got the caster. That's a complete set right there. You can do everything you need to right there and catch beavers. And a lot of time, if I'm just going to catch a couple beavers or I'm just running these traps, I'll have all that in my bucket and I'm good to go. But let's say I have another trap, the snare. What is my setup for snaring? Because I do like to snare beavers, and it does require different equipment. Also, down here in the bucket, I got some basic pliers. But you don't never know when you're going to need them. Go ahead and pack you some. But when it comes to the snaring, let's go ahead. Let's open her up. I have this little case. I don't know where I got this thing, but I don't know what it's for either, but shoot, it carries snares good. The snares I use, I'm not sure the brand, but they're 3/30 seconds cable. They're pretty well rated for beaver, fox, bobcat, coyote. These are also the same snares I use for coyote, which makes it nice because I don't have to buy a bunch of different snares. 3/30 seconds cable. It's held every beaver I've trapped in it, and it's super tough. As long as you get there on the first day. If they start chewing on this, they can get through it, but if you get there pretty quick, you can catch them. It's pretty much a one catch only thing, as with anything you snare. You're going to catch a beaver in this, the snare is going to be messed up. You can trim off all the pieces and use them over, but regardless, this is the beaver snare. You can use them in water. You can use them on the edge of water. You can use them out of water. And that's one of the good things about the trapping laws. And that's one good thing about having snares is that you're able to get around a lot of laws that could inhibit you from setting some sets. What I mean by that is with the 330 conibear, a lot of states have laws that you have to set it in or touching the water. What I'm saying is this: here's a 330 conibear. This is a pretty deadly trap for whatever decides to walk into it, and it's a blind set, so you don't know what's going to walk into it. In a lot of states, these either have to be fully submerged underwater or at least touching water. So depending on where you're trying to trap, sometimes I trap cornfields up above the river, and I try to catch the beavers as they're coming up in the field. Well, if the water's not touching it, I can't use that trap legally. So that's whenever I pull out a snare, because I can set these on 100% land, and I don't have to worry about any laws saying this has to touch water. So even if you don't plan on using snares much, I like to have some around just in case I do. I don't know if that made any sense at all. I think what I was trying to say is I don't really use snares that often, but when I find a scenario I need them, they're good to have. I think that's what I was trying to say. Now let's talk about what's in my pockets here. In this pocket right here, one thing I found really nice to have is some really heavy duty cutters. These are capable of cutting heavy duty wire as well as the cable on the snares. Because what happens is, since they are kind of a one-use thing, I'll go ahead and I'll cut off the pieces. This is the little swivel. Here's the the locking thing. And I'll just throw them in here. I don't know when I'm going to use them or if I'm going to use them, but instead of just throwing away a whole snare, I cut off the reusable parts. Then, of course, I do got a good old pair of pliers because you can't get too many of those. On the other side here, I think I've got some other stuff. So in this pocket, I have a lot of different wires, and these are actually snare supports. They're pretty heavy duty wire, but I can use these for a lot of things. If I need to, I can tie it off to a tree, say tie my snare straight onto a tree if I don't have a place to stake it down. But I can also use this as a snare support. So straighten it out, jab one side in the ground, have it hanging over, and I can attach my snare out there to kind of hold it in position. So I've got a bunch of different random parts and pieces here, as you can see. With the pliers that's on the other side, that's one of the main things that's used for. I've got some of these right here. These are just quick links. That way, if I need to, I can attach it to a barbed wire fence. I can attach it to any kind of fence. I can somehow attach and detach it from a loop if I make a loop on a tree. With snares, these are just good to have. I've got some trap tags there because if you're setting traps, they got to be legal. I've got random trap parts in there, and then I've got a whole bunch of quick links because, well, what I was mentioning earlier is that I actually use the same exact snare and the same exact snare bag for coyotes too. So one of my best spots to trap coyotes is under fences because it's like a natural pinch point. I'll just attach the snare straight up to the fence. So that's what I got those. Usually you ain't gonna have many beavers going under fences, but that's kind of my snaring setup at least. And then it's not hurt depending on what you're attaching it to. In my experience beaver trapping, you do want to tie up the snare pretty good because the beaver's probably going to be alive. If you can get him perfectly around the neck, that's all good. But the odds of that happening, they got really weird shaped heads and bodies. Getting them around the head and choking them out's probably not going to happen. Most of the time it's not. I don't think I've ever choked out a beaver and killed it. But I do get them around the body and hold them there. So make sure you either stake it down good or use some really heavy wire and just wire it into a tree somewhere. That way the beaver don't go nowhere. Because they are very strong and they do not want to be there. That is my snaring setup. Now let's talk about the foothold setup. And that is the third kind of trap. This is the trap I use. It's a Bridger number 5. So it's a pretty big trap. Closed jaw because we're not really worrying about the well-being of the animal when your objective is to drown it in a few seconds anyways. But it comes all the way down to this, and this is actually the drowning cable. If you don't know what a drowning cable is, you hook up the trap to the cable, and you secure the cable into the ground up near the trap, just where it can reach. You take this other end, put a really heavy weight on it, throw it out to deeper water. That way, whenever you catch a beaver in the foothold trap, it can actually slide one way, so it can slide down like a snare, can't come back up. But the plan is that it keeps going out to deeper water where it feels safe, gets down deep, but then since it's now attached to the heavy weight, can't get back up, it ends up drowning. The ones I use are 6 foot tall. And depending on how steep the water is, 6 foot's been good for me. Sometimes I just have to look around to find a good spot. For the stakes, to stake it up near the trap, I use these same stakes. And for the weight, let me go show you what I use. So what I use, a lot of people don't actually recommend, and I don't blame them. but I will just straight up use a cinder block. But the problem with a cinder block is that they're not super heavy. And I have had beavers pull cinder blocks up on the bank before, so maybe double it up to 2 cinder blocks. Or you can get a bag full of rocks, which is heavy to carry around. Or a giant piece of metal, which is heavy to carry around. But that's just kind of the thing about drowning sets. If you're going to use a big weight to hold the beaver down in the water, it's kind of going to be a heavy weight you got to pack around too. So I usually do 1 cinder block. You probably need to do 2 cinder blocks if you're going that route, because big old beaver's strong. But now here's some of my bulk traps, I guess. Here's some of the stakes I use. There's a shorter one. If I truly plan on the animal dying, I use this. So like if I do set a 330, I always stake it down, because you never know. But if it's something, well, like a snare, I use this one. It's a little bit longer, because I am actually planning on it being alive. I want it to stay there. I don't want it to get away. For the 330 traps, I've got handful of them here, handful of them here. I actually like the Duke traps because when you turn them sideways, they fit in a milk crate. So that's always good. I was talking about my other trap setter. This one's not as nice. It's super simple though. It don't have a lock though, but it gets a job done. It's super heavy duty. Super sweet. I like it. As for other big foothold traps, I've actually only got 3 foothold traps total. Because I usually don't go on big trapping operations. I'm usually just at 1 pond at a time, maybe 2. So I don't really use that many traps. I do have a lot more conibears than anything. And that's just because that's what I found the most success with. And if I set enough of them, usually I can wipe out a whole pond in 2 days if they're a nuisance or something. The thing about it though, if you're trapping smart beavers, or if you mess up a couple times, they start learning about the conibear traps. They start to see that square and they start figuring it out. That's whenever I switch up to a snare or the foothold, kind of give them something different. Now all that to say, I'm not a professional trapper. I don't beaver trap every day of my life. But I do feel like I've trapped a decent amount of beavers. And there has been nuisance problems where I have went in and completely wiped out the whole family unit, squad wipe, whatever you call it, I don't know. But I feel like I've done decent. So this is just kind of the gear I use. I usually pack it all around in a simple bucket. And I mean, hey, I go out there and I do trap beavers. It does work for me. If you want to learn more about the top 3 beaver traps for beginners, click right over here. Or how to get started with a caster mount set, click right over here.